It began as an ordinary Tuesday morning in New York City, gray clouds hanging low, the kind that promised rain and reminded everyone how fragile their routines could be. For Lena Hart, a 29-year-old single mother, mornings were a race against time, getting her 6-year-old son, Noah, ready for school, packing his lunch, grabbing her own coffee, and making it to her job at Raven Tech Industries before 9 a.m. The clock was always her enemy, but that morning, it wasn't time that betrayed her, it was compassion. She didn't know it yet, but one small act of kindness would turn her life upside down and reveal a truth that would stun not just her, but everyone who worked above her. The subway station was already crowded when Lena arrived, her hair damp from the drizzle, her hands clutching a paper bag filled with Noah's drawings. The city was just waking up, impatient footsteps, horns blaring, umbrellas clashing in the rain. Her shoes squeaked on the tiled floor as she hurried toward the exit, mentally running through her day's to-do list. But halfway up the stairs, something stopped her. A figure lay slumped near the wall, half hidden beneath a soaked coat, one hand twitching weakly. Most people walked past, some slowed, looked for a second, then kept going. New York was full of stories like that, and few had time for another tragedy. But Lena stopped. She dropped her bag, knelt down, and felt the man's forehead. Burning hot. His breaths were short, labored, almost painful to hear. "Sir? Can you hear me?" she asked, shaking his shoulder gently. His eyes flickered open, confused and glassy. He tried to speak but could only whisper, "Help me." His wallet had fallen beside him, its contents scattered and soaked. Without a thought, she grabbed her phone and dialed for help. The operator's voice was calm, professional, but Lena's heart was racing. "I'm near 34th Street Station," she said, voice trembling slightly. "A man's collapsed. He's conscious but barely. Please send an ambulance quickly." As she waited, Lena did what she could, took off her scarf and wrapped it around him, shielded him from the cold air blowing through the station. Her fingers were numb, her clothes damp, but she didn't move. When paramedics finally arrived, they recognized her urgency. She explained everything she knew, which wasn't much. The man had no identification except a name on a business card, Ethan Voss, and an empty medication bottle in his pocket. She didn't know the name meant something monumental. To her, he was just another human being who needed help. As the ambulance doors closed, Lena realized she was now disastrously late for work. The station clock read 9:43 a.m. She was supposed to be at her desk at 9 sharp. Her supervisor, Marilyn Crane, had already warned her, one more tardy morning, and she'd be gone. Still, Lena didn't regret helping. She took the first bus she could and arrived at Raven Tech's sleek glass building nearly an hour later, her coat still damp and her hair frizzed from the rain. She rehearsed her explanation on the elevator ride up. Maybe if she told the truth, Marilyn would understand. When she entered the reception area, heads turned. The other employees looked up briefly from their screens, then quickly back down, as if afraid to be caught showing sympathy. Marilyn stood near the front desk, her expression already tight with irritation. "Miss Hart," she said sharply, you're late. Again. Lena tried to explain. There was a man at the station, he collapsed, I couldn't just walk away. Marilyn raised an eyebrow. So, you chose to play nurse instead of showing up for work on time? The words hit harder than Lena expected. I was the only one who stopped to help, Lena replied quietly. He could have died. Marilyn crossed her arms. You think you're a hero, but this is a corporate office, not a charity. We have rules for a reason. You've already been warned twice. She turned toward HR, who stood awkwardly nearby with a folder in hand. Lena's stomach dropped as the papers came out. Effective immediately, your employment at Raven Tech is terminated, Marilyn said, sitting inside watching her quietly through tinted glass. The same man she had helped just hours earlier, no longer in a tattered coat, but in a crisp gray suit. His assistant sat beside him, holding a tablet open to a news feed. That's her, the assistant said softly. The woman who called 911 this morning. She works for Raven Tech. Ethan Voss's jaw tightened. Worked, he corrected. They fired her for being late. For a long moment, he said nothing. The city moved outside, people rushing past, horns blaring, life continuing without pause. Then, finally, he spoke. Get me everything you can find on her, her file, her record, who authorized her dismissal. His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was steel underneath. The assistant nodded and made the call immediately. As Lena walked home, unaware she had just changed the course of her own life, Ethan Voss sat back in his seat, thoughtful. He had built Raven Tech from the ground up, a company that prided itself on innovation, ethics, and humanity. And yet, one of his own employees had been fired for the kind of compassion he had always believed in. It wasn't just wrong. It was a betrayal of everything his name stood for. He looked out the window at the retreating figure of the woman who had saved him without knowing who he was. Sometimes, he murmured, almost to himself, you learn the truth about your company in the eyes of a stranger. The car pulled away into traffic, but his thoughts stayed fixed on her. For the first time in a long while, the billionaire felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest, gratitude mixed with guilt, and a strange, determined need to make things right. Lena had lost her job that morning. But without realizing it, she had gained the attention, and the respect, of a man powerful enough to change everything. Lena woke the next morning to the dull gray light seeping through her apartment blinds, the kind that made the world look washed out and tired. The air felt heavy, thick with the weight of everything that had happened the day before. Noah's soft snoring came from the other side of the room, his little arms wrapped around the stuffed dinosaur she'd bought him last Christmas. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the cracked paint on the wall, feeling the quiet hum of panic beneath her ribs. It had been less than 24 hours since she'd been fired, and already the world seemed colder. The rent was due soon. Her savings were thin. She had food for a week, maybe two. But what weighed most wasn't the fear, it was the unfairness. She had done something good, something right, and still lost everything. She made breakfast in silence, forcing a smile for Noah as he talked about his drawing project at school. He didn't need to see her worry. That was one thing she promised herself when his father left: she'd protect him from her pain, no matter what. After dropping him off at school, she stopped at the local library to search for new job openings. Her resume was simple, the kind that never impressed corporate recruiters. Administrative assistant, call center worker, temporary receptionist. No one wrote single mom who works twice as hard under qualifications. She applied for 10 positions in an hour and tried not to think about how many people were doing the same. Meanwhile, across town in Raventeka's upper floors, the atmosphere was tense. Ethan Voss had returned to the company headquarters quietly that morning. Word spread quickly: the CEO, who had been absent for several days, was back unexpectedly. No one knew why. Only his assistant, Colin, understood the full story. Ethan had spent the night in thought, replaying Lena's voice in his mind, her calm urgency as she helped him while everyone else walked by. Her face haunted him, the steady eyes of someone who didn't expect anything in return. It wasn't just gratitude now. It was disbelief that his company, his creation, had punished someone like her. By noon, Ethan had already reviewed Lena's employee record. 2 years at Raventeka. No formal complaints. Punctual. Efficient. The only marks against her were 3 late arrivals, all within the last 6 months, each documented by her supervisor, Marilyn Crane. He scrolled through Marilyn's employee performance reports: sharp numbers, high productivity, but a string of complaints from subordinates for hostile management style. Ethan had always known Marilyn was strict, but he'd assumed fairness came with discipline. Now he wasn't so sure. He called Colin into his office. "Get her in here," he said simply. Marilyn entered a few minutes later, confident, rehearsed. "Mr. Voss," she greeted with a professional smile. "Good to see you back." "I didn't expect." Ethan didn't respond. "Tell me," he interrupted, "why did you terminate Lena Hart?" Marilyn blinked. "Ah, yes, the temporary assistant. She was repeatedly late, sir. After several warnings, I followed HR protocol and dismissed her." Ethan studied her face, his expression unreadable. "Were you aware of the reason for her lateness yesterday?" he asked quietly. "She stopped to help someone who had collapsed. She called an ambulance, stayed with him until it arrived." Marilyn hesitated. "With respect, sir, our policy doesn't make exceptions for personal errands during work hours." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Personal errands?" His voice dropped, low and sharp. "A man nearly died. She saved his life." Marilyn shifted in her seat, unsure now. "Still, it wasn't her place, it was mine," Ethan said evenly. "The man she helped was me." Silence filled the office like static. Marilyn froze. "Sir, I had no idea." "No, you didn't," Ethan cut in. "Because you didn't care enough to ask. You saw a line in a policy book and decided it mattered more than humanity." He stood, his voice controlled but laced with anger. "Do you know why I built this company, Marilyn? Because I believed people could create something meaningful if they were treated as more than numbers on a report." Her professional calm wavered. "Mr. Voss, you only followed rules," he said coldly. "But leadership isn't about rules. It's about judgment." He walked toward the window, staring out at the skyline before continuing. "Effective immediately, Ms. Hart is to be reinstated. Full pay, plus a raise. And you," he turned to her sharply, "will take a leave of absence. Consider it time to rethink what kind of manager you want to be." By the time Marilyn left the office, pale and speechless, Ethan had already drafted an email to HR. But reinstating Lena wasn't enough. He wanted to see her, not as her CEO, but as the man whose life she'd saved. Without Lena felt tears threaten again, but this time, they were different. Relief. Disbelief. Gratitude. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," he said simply. As she nodded slowly, Ethan turned to leave. The night air was cool, the city lights reflecting in the wet pavement. For a moment, he paused at the edge of the sidewalk and looked back. She was still standing in the doorway, holding the envelope close to her chest, the faintest smile on her lips. He smiled too, that night, as he rode home through the city he owned but rarely felt part of. Ethan realized something profound. Power wasn't in wealth or reputation. It was in moments like that, where kindness became a mirror, showing him what his company, and perhaps he himself, had lost along the way. And now, because of a woman who had chosen humanity over convenience, he was ready to build it all back, better.